Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and thank you for listening to this new episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Before we get into the show, we want to remind you that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means it exists because of those who support it, and they do so in a few different ways. One, they get weekly downloads of this show via a monthly subscription on our support page. We will link you to it in the description box. Looks like this, button right there. Also, you can hit up our Amazon Associates link, where basically we get a kickback for all purchases you make on Amazon.com when you use this link. Only works in the US though, unfortunately, but you can use it to basically make purchases you were already planning on making on Amazon, and that helps out this podcast as well. Also, you can stream it on YouTube and share it with a friend. All support is appreciated. All right, thank you for listening again, and on with the show. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here. You know who it is. I'm here fresh off of a performance with Kamasi Washington and The Next Step at the historical Howard Theater in Washington, D.C. And basically we're going to have a quick conversation about the performance that he just had, the new record, and all the exciting music that he's going to, be coming out with, along with his band members here that he was talking with on stage tonight. How you doing, dude?
Pretty good, Anthony. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I was just talking with some of your bandmates about this new record, and you've been touring behind it. You were saying on stage this is your first East Coast tour with this band and with this record. Give us an idea of what the reception's been like so far. I mean, the crowd here totally freaked out. I mean, has this been a pretty consistent reaction?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, basically every show's been sold out, and I mean, there was a line around the corner at the Blue Note in New York. I was totally in awe. I was I can't believe this. It's been and even little small towns Northampton, it was people are there and they're into it and they know the record, and they're the reception has been so warm. It's kind of it's amazing.
You were talking about how you were at Blue Note on stage. I mean, that's such a historical place, as is this. I mean, what's it like from your perspective to sort of be not only kind of living your dream as a musician, but kind of to sort of be making this impact on these historical places where I'm sure people played who have a huge influence on you?
It's a bit heavy. It's you go play at the Blue Note and you start to realize the lineage, and when people are looking at you you're kind of the next step on that evolution is kind of but it's also it's inspiring because it's we've been working for this for our whole lives, since I was 3, and all of us, a lot of us are second generation musicians, so music kind of came with the whole, it was a package deal. Life and music kind of came together, and so to be a part of a lineage like the Blue Note or Howard Theater, it's just kind of it's heavy, but it's inspirational as well.
I mean, you can't totally be surprised about the people thinking of you as The Next Step. I mean, you did name your band after.
That is true. Yeah, I did that to myself, but it's a good kind of pressure. It's pressure, but it's a good pressure. It's more of an inspirational pressure than it is make me freak out pressure. So it's great. It's fun. It's I
mean, it's a pressure, but it kind of seems like something with that name of your band, with the name of, for example, the opening track to the new record, Changing of the Guard, with the name of the record, The Epic. It also kind of seems like something you set out to do.
Yeah, I mean, and actually it's funny. A lot of those names have are puns, and like Change of the Guard. I actually wrote that for my dad and his friends, because when I was a kid, my dad had a bunch of friends. He's really talented, and a bunch of his friends were super talented, and I used to always just wonder how they didn't get a chance to show themselves to the world. So it was kind of well, at least they'll have a song that, what I mean? And, and then I definitely, we've always wanted that though. We've always, for years, we've been cultivating the sound we have, and we've taken it to weird places and for crowds that should not like it, and they've loved it. And so we've always been saying man, if we just had a chance, we could really do something special. So it was getting the chance and having it work out is oh wow, that's cool. It's a cool feeling,
But the thing is, you've been working in the music industry for a long time. I mean, collaborating with a lot of big artists, touring with a lot of big artists, and performing with a lot of big artists. It seems like the opportunity was always there, but you weren't coming out with solo stuff. But now we have this new solo record. So after years of performing and recording with other artists, what kind of pushed you to, I'm going to come out with my own record, and it's going to be 3 hours long, and I'm going to call it the Epic, and I'm going to have these sort of really ambitious ideas for it, and sort of really high bars that I'm going to be setting for it.
It's weird. It's like, I played on a ton of albums. I knew everybody at every record label, and I was around, and all of us were really. But it wasn't really till Thundercat came out with his album, because he's in the same collective that we all grew up with.
Golden Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, Golden Age of Apocalypse. When that album came out, it was like all of a sudden, people, that along with Flying Lotus, what he was doing, it made people kind of like pay attention. And then there was an avenue for it. Like we recorded before, we just didn't really put the albums out because there was no real place to put them out. And even like the way we recorded them, going in, we didn't really feel that there was a place to put it. It was just kind of more like something we did just because we just had to do it, like just to ease my soul, I had to like record some music. But when Lotus asked me to make a record for Brainfeeder, that kind of spread. Like it was like Stevens putting his record out and having that success, and like people like understanding it and getting it like around the world. And then when Lotus asked me to make a record, that it's like, it was like the light turned on for all of us, and we were like, man, we gotta like record our music and start putting our energy towards ourselves, because it's easy, especially like when you come up with talented musicians, young, you get caught up playing for other people, and it's like a whirlwind. Like you're playing with one person, and then that kind of falls apart, and someone else catches you, and like now you're playing for them, and then someone else catches you, and you're playing for them.
You're in a position where somebody wants to have that talent on their record, yeah. So you're always getting these invites.
Yeah, getting these invites, and you're making money, and you're traveling around the world, and you're having fun, and it's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, you can easily, and it's probably what happened to my dad and his generation. You can just lose yourself. Because also part of like playing for other people is like kind of like compromising who you are to realize their vision. So like I'll take these things out of me. Like I play with Shaka Khan, I played 90% keyboards. So months would go by where I was like barely playing the saxophone because I was doing something for someone else to realize that's what she needed. She needed a keyboard player more than she needed a saxophone player. So it's like all of a sudden, the light turned on. We're like, oh man, we have all this talent, all these songs, this whole sound that people really love. They just don't get to hear it. So we have to just like kind of buckle down and take a bit of a hit and just commit to doing our own thing. It's a commitment thing, really.
So it just kind of seems like between what you've been seeing as far as the response with live performances, as well as the fact that you had a place to put the record and just this want to invest more in yourself, the climate was just kind of right.
Yeah, it was right. It was right. The timing was right. I can tell you, like, I finished this album in 2014, and I was like, screaming at the stars, like, why is it not coming out? And like, it ended up being perfect timing, after like, because I didn't know I was going to end up doing anything on Kendrick Lamar's record, but like just that record coming out kind of opened the door for people to be open to something like my record too, and so it's and even You're Dead, like my record was done before You're Dead came out, so it's been a it's, and even the fact that we didn't come out when we were younger, because we were good and we were really talented and we had a lot of energy and stuff like that, but our little journey like playing through with all these other people has cultivated our sound and made it kind of more rich. Because like there's things I learned playing with Shaka Khan and like Francisco Agobea and Harvey Mason that I just necessarily wouldn't have learned on my own, So it's been, it's everything happens in its proper time and when it's supposed to happen.
Well, I mean, large touring jazz bands are fewer and more far between than they used to be, so you had to kind of pick up that experience and those chops somewhere, just with other artists playing other genres.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's a process. Becoming a musician is like becoming a person. You know what I mean? It's like, because that's all you're doing. You're playing music.
Over again, like from scratch.
Yeah. Because all your music is an expression of who you are. So if you don't have anything in there to pull out, then it's just technique. It's just notes and chords.
So a little bit about some of the albums that you said were being recorded while your album was being recorded on stage. You said that there were band members of yours who were simultaneously recording their own music while they were working with you, and that they're going to have their own albums coming out soon. When are we going to see some of those releases? Where might they end up landing? How are we going to see them promoted? Where can we hear them?
We're working on a partnership right now. We're kind of developing our own label. Just because we want to keep, we have a family, we have a thing together, so we can keep it together. We want to, rather than spread it all over the place. So we're talking to a couple of different labels about maybe a partnership. Like Ronald Bruner's record is done, ready to go. So was Miles Mosley's record, and Cameron Gray's piano player, his record. So we got a lot of records that are done. Some of them we're still working on them, and some of them are like done. So soon.
The epic and, with kind of the titling of this record and everything that we were talking about before, it seemed like you definitely wanted to make some kind of musical impact with this album. But do you think kind of inadvertently you're making also a generational impact a little bit? Because, there are a lot of records that I review over the course of the year, and some of which, do take well to the people who watch, don't take well. And I'm very well aware that there's, a significantly young fan base, watching my reviews. And even though jazz might have been a kind of alien thing to a lot of them, they took to it really well. And I think, you're seeing at these dates, there are a lot of young kids showing up at some of these dates. Does that sort of give you hope for the future of this music?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's a sign of the time. I think that information is kind of more accessible than it's ever been, and so young kids they can get to things. They can get to anything they want to get to. All they need is the desire, and they can kind of instantly, So as soon as they think they like jazz or think they like music that's kind of like that, improvisational or instrumental, all of a sudden they can just tap into all of it, which is what I feel is kind of happening. It's like it's like they've been in a dark, the humanity's been in a dark room for so many years, for our whole existence, and now there's a light on, but everybody's eyes are closed, and now people are starting to slowly open their eyes, and so, cool stuff. There was a time when you could have something really cool, but if you didn't have a way to get it to people, there was no way for them to get it. Now it's if you have something cool, it's almost hard to keep it from them. You know what I mean? You could if you have a record, it's hard to keep it away from people, let alone there's no difficulty getting it to them. So now I think the young kids are they're looking for something cool, and what we do is, we've always known that though, because we've always taken it to places from people, young kids, and just people in general who just, historically or, commonly weren't considered, jazz fans, people who you just wouldn't think would do that. We play gothic clubs and stuff like that, and they just dig it. Just I don't know why exactly. I guess there's a relatability, maybe just because we all played so many different styles of music, and we've kind of lived such kind of in a lot of ways common lives. We've had a lot of stuff that's really embedded in our music, but it's really cool though.
I was actually talking with one of your bandmates about the fact that the record covers so many bases, so many different styles of jazz music over the years. Sometimes stuff that some of the jazz fusion tracks on the record, stuff that jazz musicians from the 50s or 60s were kind of wincing at or thinking ugh, this is, not the direction things should go in. But you guys have found this way to kind of celebrate it under this one umbrella in a really creative, amazing way, and just give each style so much virtuosity and energy.
Yeah, it's part of the journey we have. We've played with so many different people. I played with Gerald Wilson for years and years and years, who was who was born in 1918, and he used to babysit Count Basie's kids. And then I played with Stanley Clarke, and realizing that Gerald Wilson loved Stanley Clarke, and Stanley Clarke loved Gerald Wilson, and George Duke played with Gerald Wilson, and the connections in music. We have these terms and terminologies that kind of divided, but the reality of the music, actually just the sounds that come out of the instruments, are very related, and they're very connected. And if you just kind of ignore the social barriers of it, then you start to realize if you're really playing this, then it's already connected to that. So it's really a natural progression over there. You know, it's a natural progression from like blues to jazz to rock and roll. They just naturally connect to one another if you kind of ignore what people say about it.
It just kind of seems like each decade of musicians wanting to kind of come up with their own thing and their own style to kind of separate themselves from the previous 10 years of music. And with so many people just kind of turning a blind eye to jazz over the past few decades, which in one breath is sad, but in another breath, it's kind of allowed you guys to just bring all this stuff together under one roof without anybody really sort of batting an eye at it.
Yeah, it's part of like, you know, in LA, like there's a whole jazz scene that's really, I was talking about my dad, like it's gotten ignored. And in some ways it sucked for us because it felt like you said, I was telling you, like, I felt like we had nowhere to go. There was no avenue for us to take our music. But on the flip side, there was no one telling us what to do. No one like pushing us to do this or do that, or like telling us what the rules were, or like that you can't, like you said, you can't play jazz fusion and play swing and play funk and play soul and play all these other different things. No one was telling us that. So no one was told Miles Mosley that, you know, we play upright bass, you can't put it through pedals and rock out. So he did it because no one told him he couldn't do it, you know. So it's a gift and a curse being ignored, you know, and that's kind of like, that's totally right on point.
But like you were talking about earlier, how, you know, you can sort of get these kids anything and kids can get a hold of anything on the internet. It just seems like now was a really opportune time to come out with this record with so many net labels out there, and with the fact that you can just put out music digitally, and how it's not necessarily as much a risk as it would have been if you were pitching a 3-hour jazz record with numerous genres on it in the 90s, and we're going to need all the studio time and all these musicians. It seems like your ability to kind of just put it out digitally gave this record a chance that it wouldn't have necessarily had years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just like that, like back in the day when it was like you have to fight with a CD shop owner as to where your record got put. You know, and you don't have to worry about that anymore because it's just a click of a button. So it's like, it doesn't matter which genre you put it in because kids are just going to click around till they find what they want anyway. So yeah, it's definitely, you know, time, the time that we're in is definitely a big part of what allows us, is allowing us to do what we're doing. You know, like when my dad was coming up, like I said, they were dope. They used to come in the house and practice and rehearse all these songs, but like no one had a home studio back then like we did, you know. So it's a good time in some ways, and it's a hard time in some ways.
As far as like the home studio stuff and just recording the record, it seems like you guys were able to sort of have this really modern, vibrant, fresh, punchy, clean recording, but you were able to kind of keep it sounding really dynamic and organic and in the moment. It's like, you know, it sounds new. It sounds kind of like it fits in the digital age, but kind of that, I don't know, that in the moment feel of it isn't lost in the process of pulling it together.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is Tony Austin, the drummer in the band, was the engineer. So it's kind of like he's a very technical kind of guy, but he's also a musician. So he understands that, like, in the end, it's the connection between the musicians that really comes across to people, I mean, especially in kind of music we're playing. So that was cool to have someone who's engineering it who already understands that, because a lot of
times playing it.
And is playing it, yeah. You have to try to explain that, like, look, you can't put me in a booth with 4 walls and I can't see anyone because, yeah, it sounds cleaner, but then you lose a connection. So most of the record, we're all playing in one room, you know, face to face, you know what I mean? And that's where that feeling that it feels kind of old in that sense, but it's new in that, like, we did record digitally and, like, we were isolated in a way, you know, so.
It kind of sounds like he, you know, engineering the record, playing on the record, being a fantastic drummer, to sort of be a musician and thrive in the modern age, you've got to wear so many hats. You know, you've got to be able to do so many different things. You can't it's not enough just to be a great musician. You've got to be able to record yourself or arrange or whatever, you know. What hats do you sort of see yourself wearing aside from, you know, just being a great saxophonist? Oh yeah,
all of them. I tried to let go on this record and not like Tony engineered it and a guy, Benjamin Tierney, mixed it. But, you know, in the end, you end up right there with them, explaining what the music is, promoting it, just pulling all these musicians together. Like talented musicians come normally with like pretty strong personalities. So there's a lot of like, hold on, wait, put your knives away. You know what I mean? Let's talk about this. And, so there's that, there's, the writing, the composing. I mean, it's, if you're going to realize your dream, your vision musically in this day and age, you're going to have your hands in every stage of it. Even like the artwork. It was like, I was with the photographer scouting out places that we should go take pictures, and, even the fonts and everything else. It's like you find yourself just in every phase. Like you have to kind of be involved, which is good and it's bad. It's like because that's why, John Coltrane, recorded for like 9 years and has like 40 albums, because he just came into a studio, recorded and walked away. And then 2 months later, an album was out in the streets, me as a musician in this day and age, you really have to do everything. So, which makes it more who you are from top to bottom, but it just takes longer.
Sort of talking about that process of getting everyone who is a talented musician to sort of agree on the the recording of the song, or each person's part, or whatever, while that can kind of seem really difficult, and that can kind of seem like a bit of a headache. I think the music has a certain characteristic to it when you've gone through that process.
Oh yeah. And I was pushing for them to put more of themselves into the music, almost to the point where they would get upset, because I was like, play more, do something, make it you. And they're like, it is me. And but that's what I wanted. I wanted to feel like, because I think so much in music today, like, it's looked at it as like there's a star mentality where like it's like, oh, it's one person. That I didn't want it to feel like that. I think like the best music is a communal thing. Like music to me connects people. It doesn't separate them.
That's exactly what I was telling one of your bandmates. One of the greatest things about the record is that it feels so communal.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to feel like, even though like they're my songs, I want each person to put themselves in it. Like put something in there. You know what I mean? Like I would leave room for that. And like, even as like, we play live, if you want to change something, change it. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with something being different than the way I imagined it, maybe,
I think it's really great, in the modern age, that we're able to sort of have one person create more music than they would have been able to years ago, just because of technology and the digital age and everything. But again, the collaborative process with numerous musicians that are this talented, the music comes out in a way that it never could with just one person by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and it didn't back in the day either. Like when you really get down to like, you talk to people like, talk to George Duke, and you talk to like, I did some stuff with Quincy Jones, and like there were a lot of people involved. Like there were horn arrangers, string arrangers, lyricists, songwriters, producers, engineers, and they all had their part in making something, and that's what this was a little different. It was in that I was more or less giving the performers that kind of license to like, like Brandon Coleman, you're a master at creating sounds on the keyboard. So what do you hear? I can hear something. I can tell you to do something, but I think it'd be cooler because I'm already infused in this. There's already a truckload of Kamasi in this song. I'd love to get some Brandon Coleman in here because I think it'll make it more interesting. And I can't put Brandon Coleman into the record. I can only put more of myself in there. So it's kind of like, it's like a musical gumbo in that sense, rather than musical soup.
So the tour seems to be going well. The performances are going great. The record seems to be well received. When the tour's over, kind of what's your next step? What's your next focus?
Really getting these other albums out. That's what we're all really focused on, I'm focusing on that. And then my own stuff as well. When I was working on this, when I was making this album, I had this crazy story that kind of, as I was doing the string and choir stuff, I kind of like, dreamed half of it and kind of made up half of it, and it ended up kind of being what made me leave the album three discs long. So, you know, I've told a couple of people the whole story, and like when they hear the whole story, it's like, oh, it makes so much sense now. So I have written down, but it's just written down in all kind of crazy little pieces. Like, so I'm trying to like bring them all together. Like part of it's written in a little folder I have, and Post-its and on top of music, and it's just kind of all over the place. But I'm gonna pull that story together and maybe make some kind of like graphic novel or something like that. That could, so like you can listen to their album and kind of see the story that made it be what it is, you know.
That sounds even more ambitious than just coming out with another record.
Oh. Yeah, it's difficult. It's like in trying to find the time. It's like now I have to put on a writer hat. I'm like, you know, get out my.
You're gonna have to hire an illustrator.
Yeah. Well, my sister's an amazing artist. I have a lot of artists in my life actually that are really, really amazing. So I just have to get someone that, and I kind of have a vision for what it will be visually. You know, I have to just try to like, you know, layman style. You know what I mean? Like it's funny. Like I'm in a reverse, you know, situation, because usually as musicians you have like people who aren't necessarily that musically trained, trying to tell you what they want, and they don't know the terminology. And so now I'm going to be in that position, like trying to tell this illustrator, like, no, more like fuzzy-ish, you know, don't make it so lined. Yeah, but it'll be fun. It'll be a fun thing to do.
All right, man. Thanks for talking to me, dude. I really appreciate it. Performance is great. Record is great. And again, thanks for doing this interview.
Oh, yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for coming out. And thanks for all the, you know, support and love and everything, dude.